The court breathed like a held prayer. Dim torchlight licked the carved pillars. Shadows pooled in the corners, as if the room itself were listening. David sat with his harp across his knees, fingers moving in a hush of music that seemed to stitch the silence together. Each note trembled against the heavy air. And the men at Saul's feet watched with faces like stone. On the throne Saul sat, a king in the ruin of his own peace. His eyes were darkened by a green inward light, envy that had the shape of a spirit. The presence that once crowned him had withdrawn. Where God's favor had rested, now a tormenting shadow hovered, restless and cruel. The harp's melody could not reach the place inside him that had been hollowed out. Without warning, the court shattered. A hand rose. A spear left the king's grasp, and the sound it made was a clean, terrible thing. The blade singing through the torchlit air, like a voice of accusation. The spear cut a line between David and the throne, a bright, lethal punctuation. David's breath stopped. Shock and a cold, animal fear seized him. He felt the world tilt and the music fall away. He stumbled back, heart pounding, the echo of the spear still ringing in his ears. He fled into the night with the cloak of the city swallowing him. Breath trembling, footsteps a prayer. In the dark, he whispered to himself, "What have I done? Why does this king seek my life?" The question hung in the night, like a lament. Hidden among rocks and olive trees, David pressed his face to the earth and wept. He had served the king with the loyalty of a son, had soothed the monarch's spirit with song, had fought the Lord's battles at his command. Now the hand that once blessed him sought his blood. The betrayal tasted like iron. He prayed in the wilderness with the rawness of a man who had been stripped of certainty. His prayers were not polished words, but ragged cries. "Why, O Lord? Where is the shelter?" He poured out tears that were both grief and bewilderment. Each tear was a small, honest psalm, a shaping of sorrow into song. In the dark, he wrestled with a new reality. The man he had honored was hunting him. The thought was a blade that cut deeper than any spear. Fear sharpened into resolve. He would not flee from God. He would learn to hear God in the caves, to make his lament into a covenant of endurance. Jonathan came like dawn. He was Saul's son and David's soul brother, a bond forged by oath and by God. Their friendship had been sealed in the quiet places of the heart, a covenant deeper than blood. Jonathan's eyes held the same light that had once rested on Saul, but his spirit was humble and clear. David sought him in the hush of night and told him the truth with a voice that trembled. Jonathan's first response was disbelief. He could not imagine his father's hand turned so dark. He insisted that Saul would never do such a thing without cause. He would ask his father himself and bring back the answer. Jonathan's heart was rent. Loyalty to his father warred with love for his friend. He stood between two altars, the throne and the covenant. The conflict carved him open. He loved his father, and yet he loved the man anointed by God. He could not, in conscience, betray either without first seeking the truth. They devised a test like a prayer. David would hide during the feast. Jonathan would tell his father that David had gone to Bethlehem to worship with his family. If Saul received the news with calm, David would be safe. If fury rose, the truth would be revealed. The feast was a tapestry of laughter and wine, but beneath the tablecloth, the air was taut as a bowstring. Jonathan approached his father with the steadiness of one who must speak truth into a storm. He told Saul that David had gone to Bethlehem. For a moment, the court held its breath. Then Saul's face changed. The calm was a mask that slipped. Fury rose like a flood. His voice became thunder. He called Jonathan the son of a rebellious woman and accused him of siding with David. The words were knives. In a frenzy of rage, he hurled a spear at his own son. The spear struck the couch where Jonathan had been standing a heartbeat before. In that instant, Jonathan understood. The truth fell upon him like a ruin. His father's heart had been consumed. The man who should have protected the Anointed One had become his pursuer. Jonathan's grief was a holy thing. Righteous anger braided with sorrow. Under the open sky, in a field of barley, Jonathan and David met as the world held its breath. Jonathan shot arrows into the air. A signal rehearsed and simple. The first arrow flew. The second marked the place. David, hidden among the stalks, rose and came to him. They embraced as brothers who had been made by God's hand. They wept together, two men who knew the weight of destiny. Jonathan's voice was low and steady as he blessed David and acknowledged the Lord's anointing upon him. He would not stand in the way of God's choice. He would not claim the crown that was not his. Jonathan's humility shone like a lamp. He recognized God's work and stepped aside with love. He gave David his robe, his armor, his sword, a token of surrender and of blessing. Their farewell was not merely sorrow, but consecration. They parted with a covenant sealed in tears, knowing that this might be the last time their hands would clasp in life. Michal, David's wife, became a quiet fortress. She warned him of plots, hid him from her father's men, and wove deception to protect the man she loved. Their marriage had been used as a snare by Saul, a political gambit meant to bind David to the court and to the Philistines' designs. Each time Saul sent David into battle, he hoped for ruin, but each time David returned with victory, and each victory fed the green flame in Saul's heart. Saul's mind unraveled like a scroll burned at the edges. The tormenting spirit grew bolder. Paranoia became his counsel. He paced the palace like a hunted man, seeing enemies in every shadow. The presence of God that had once rested on him had moved, and he could not bear the loss. He raged against the anointing he could not reclaim. Isolation closed around him. His counselors fell silent. The kingdom felt the tremor of his madness. The Philistines gathered like storm clouds on the horizon, and Saul's fear of losing the throne became a drumbeat. That drowned out reason. The king who had once been chosen now staggered toward ruin. David became a man of caves and psalms. He fled from place to place, gathering the broken and the faithful. In the wilderness, he wrote songs that would become the bones of a nation's worship. He cried out to God in the night and listened for the small, sure voice. That would guide him. Suffering tempered him. Exile taught him mercy and steel. Followers came to him not for power, but for the presence of God that moved with him. In the darkness, he learned to lead with a heart that feared the Lord. Each trial shaped him into the king he would be. Tender, fierce, and wholly dependent on God. Across the land, Saul's distance from God widened. The kingdom trembled as the Philistines rose. And as the king's spirit sank, the hand of God was moving history toward a new center. The fall of Saul drew near like thunder on the hills. The rise of David was inevitable as dawn. In the hush that followed their parting, David remained in exile, a fugitive with a harp and a promise. Saul spiraled toward destruction, a crown slipping from a brow that could no longer bear it. The nation stood on the edge of transition, and the air itself seemed to whisper a single solemn truth. God's anointed will not be abandoned. The story closed on a note of prophecy and sorrow. The fall of Saul was near. The rise of David is certain. The hand of God guided the turning of the ages, and men wept as they watched the old order give way to the new.